Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, oil the hinges of our hearts' doors, that they may swing gently and easily to welcome your coming. Amen. So our story from the gospel this morning tells of Jesus on that mountain. The crowds followed him, and there is a request. Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean. And so Jesus does stretch out his hands and says, I do choose, be made clean. The leprosy was cleansed immediately. And then Jesus, as he often does, says, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer that gift to Moses' commandment as a testimony to them. Well, you know how things happen with those stories. Word gets out. And Jesus continues to cast out spirits with a word or cures the sick. He takes on that job of smoothing the rough edges in his place of ministry. As I mentioned a little bit in the welcome this morning, this worship series from Worship Design Studio hit me hard in the heart. This journey through recovery and Lent, because, it has images of beach glass and beaches and shells, and does it hit my heart. Because that has been one of the places in my life always where I go to smooth out the rough edges in my life. There is nothing like a winter storm on the beach with the wind coming at you to almost clean out the cobwebs in your brain, where there seems to be a refrain of, I do choose. I am clean. You have made me clean. This week, as Lent started on Ash Wednesday, and as I was preparing for our Ash Wednesday service, I got word of the death of a dear family friend from Massachusetts. Andre was the salt of the earth. Andre and his family lived a couple of houses down from where my dad grew up. And was probably 15, 18 years older than my dad and his brothers. But Andre was on the beach almost every single day. Andre was one of those people that swam in the ocean, starting in about mid-March and maybe extended it through the end of October. Andre had a sailboat, Andre had a dinghy, but Andre swam too. Andre lived for that water. And we often joke that if you were to open a vein, it would be salt water. Andre was one of those people that a stereotypical salt of the earth, ocean-loving guy from New England. Well, I lived with my grandmother for a number of years, so Andre and I crossed paths quite a bit. We'd run into each other on the beach or swimming. And this one, I think it was March, there was a big storm, a big nor'easter in March, probably in 2001 or 2. And Andre had come to the seawall to check out the waves, to check out the surf, to make sure that the dinghy that was on the seawall was well secured, to just survey the horizon, to see about those waves, to see how bad this storm really was. I saw him out there and I said to my grandmother, I'm going to go join him. So I joined Andre out on the seawall, and we talked about the storm as good ocean-loving people do. Yeah, that's some serious surf, but it's not too bad. I wonder how it's hitting the other side of the island. It's not too bad. And then as we stood with our hands on their hips, looking out over the horizon, there's a big wave. Yeah, I think that one's a big wave. Yeah, I see that coming. So the edge of the seawall, we sat there and watched that wave coming. It was a big wave. It moved in and in and in, and we stayed on the edge of the seawall. And then the wave hit and broke at the edge of the seawall, at the edge of the beach, launched over the seawall, came to over our heads. Andre's was probably about 6 feet, and I'm about 5'9.5". The water went over our heads over the seawall, and we vanished. Gone. Or at least that is what my grandmother told us, who had been watching from the living room window and saw us disappear in the wave. So the wave washed away. Neither of us even ever lost our balance, but we had disappeared in that big wave that came over our heads and drenched us to the bone. And we stopped, and Andre and I looked at each other, and Andre said, "Yep, that was a big wave." And we turned around, and we walked back to our respective homes. So I'm reminded of that when I think about rough edges, challenging moments, tough times, scary times. The words out of my grandmother's mouth to scold me for being on the edge of the seawall were not becoming of the Southern belle that she grew up as. That moment turned into a story that we told to family repeatedly. It was one that Andre and I, every once in a while, would look back on. Yep, that was a big wave. But somewhere in the midst of that, there is that moment of I do choose, I will be made clean. And we say yes. And we say yes to the risk that life presents to us. We say yes to the rough edges. We say yes to the times that scare us. We say yes to the anxiety because somewhere in there, there is good news. Somewhere in there we find smooth edges. Somewhere in there we find healing. Somewhere in there we get to celebrate life. The silliness, this downright silliness of standing on a seawall in the midst of a nor'easter. We get to celebrate life even knowing that our mortality is certain. That all of our journeys will wind up there someday. So, beloved ones, as we journey into Lent, I ask you to be mindful of that mortality. Although I don't think these days any of us need much of a reminder. But remember in the midst of it too to celebrate, to embrace the good news, to know that Jesus chooses to heal us too. Thanks be to God.